Good evening, all. Good evening, Miami. Good evening to my fellow attendees. Yes, this is Rob Piper again, and for this particular Zoom side chat, I wanted to just ask the question: is Miami broke? It's talk about its finances, and just get input and to discuss a couple of things. I know for one, Miami is kind of like a paradox, a paradise and a paradox in that, and I got some stats here that, excuse me real quick. It currently, Miami has a poverty rate of 19.2% per the Census Bureau. Now that is higher than in Florida and in the rest of the United States. It also has a median household income of just over $59,000, which in itself is lower than the Florida median and lower than the country median. It's got 20% people without health insurance in Miami. That is a fifth of all the people in Miami do not have health insurance, and it has the fifth highest income inequality in the country, according to a report by an independent banking company. And also, it's a nonprofit organization, a 501(c) called Truth in Accounting, has reviewed Miami's finances. Like every year, every city has to put out a comprehensive annual financial report, and Truth in Accounting reviews these for like dozens of cities. And it reviewed Miami's, and what it found is that it gave Miami a D in terms of its finances, in that Miami currently has 23 billion in it's $23 billion in the hole. That's what it needs to pay its bills per the review of Miami's its comprehensive annual financial report. And that's a burden of like just over $13,000 per taxpayer in Miami. Miami's not as bad as some other cities. New York City got an F because they're about 100 to 200 billion dollars in the hole. But what Truth in Accounting does say is that the saving grace for Miami is just the fact that Miami's economy is strengthened with job growth, airport success, and strong industry performance. This strong economic base will be essential in helping the city address its $2.3 billion in unfunded bills that occurred in prior years. Now, does anyone care to comment on that?
I was at downtown at the Arts Center this weekend, and I saw the concrete sculpture that's going up along the side of the causeway. And I said, well, what's the function of it? The person I was with said, it has no function, it's just a decoration. And how much does that cost, and who's paying for it?
And what does it mean?
And nobody had any idea. So it'd be nice to know.
Yeah, that something like that would be nice to know. In fact, and I'm going to get into that because there are certain things that the average taxpayer should get more indication as to what's being spent, and
why.
Yeah, and why. And yeah, I guess you characterize it as a kind of a flashy thing, and that's like the perfect. I don't know if it's called an analogy or a metaphor for Miami, but yeah, Miami, behind everything that's wrong with it financially, it's actually pretty strong financially. Miami has vast natural resources, like its weather. I consider that a natural resource. It's got its beaches, its waterways, its tourism. Yeah, Miami is definitely not hurting financially, despite the fact that it is, per the people that look at its books, 2.3 billion in the hole. I mean, its five biggest industries are international trade and logistics, finance and banking, real estate and construction, healthcare, and technology and innovation. That fourth one, healthcare, it's interesting that that's one of the largest industries in Miami, but yet 1 in 5 Miamians do not have access to health insurance.
Right.
It's odd, quite odd. Yeah. And Miami's GDP is actually pretty high. It is the biggest since it is the biggest city in Miami-Dade County, Miami-Dade County actually has a GDP of 240 billion and a growth rate of 34%, which is huge.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. So it's kind of it's that paradox where it's like, okay, it's 2.3 billion in the whole, but it has that level of GDP, that level of economic strength, and it has added 33,000 jobs. It added 33,000 jobs in 2024 and is recognized as the second best city for business startups. And in addition,
Best where?
yeah, go ahead.
Florida or US?
Oh,
That city.
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't have that in my notes, but I'm gonna venture to say that that would be in the U.S. and in Florida, it would likely be the top one. But
Okay. Yeah,
let me check on that.
that's all right.
But Miami's got 17.5 billion in real estate assets in its portfolio. That's managed by Miami's Department of Real Estate and Asset Management. So it's definitely not poor. So those are non-liquid assets as opposed to the liquid assets that will be needed to pay Miami's bills. And all that real estate, whether it be the Wharf Miami, the Rickenbacker, all the marinas like the Rickenbacker Marina, the Dinner Key Marina, the Marine Stadium Marina, Hobie Island Beach, all of those are real estate assets that Miami owns. And they're assets that ensure that Miami is in fact able, despite all its problems, it's still able to function and be one of the most economically successful cities in Florida.
Yeah,
I just got a tax refund from the city of Miami.
Oh, okay. Then I know what that is. Miami, the city of Miami reduced. They made a 5% reduction on the tax rate that they were charging in fiscal year 2023 through 2024. So that's great. That's at least something. They lowered taxes and were able to return a piece of that to the residents. You don't have to give me exact, but was it significant? Did it help?
Anything helps.
I hear you. And here's another statistic for you, just to exemplify just how wealthy Miami is. A couple years ago, there was a report that came out that said that Miami had 160 centimillionaires, people with wealth above 100 million, and 12 billionaires within its city limits, and that 800 centimillionaires own primary or secondary homes in Miami and its surrounding neighborhoods. So Miami is extremely wealthy in comparative to other cities, despite the fact that its financial reports show that it's 2.3 billion in the hole. And the thing about those financial reports, it's a good thing we have organizations like Truth in Accounting to go through them, because I went through it myself. It is a 300-page monster of a document that puts the creative in creative accounting. There are different types of statements that describe where the money is going. And I think Truth in Accounting they were able to go push right through and streamline all the so-called BS. Just to give you an example, it's crazy. There's all these statements. I printed out some of them. One is called a statement of net position. Another one is called a statement of net position for discretely presented component units. Another one is called a statement of activities for discretely presented component units. Another one is called a statement of changes in fiduciary net position, fiduciary funds, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for government funds, reconciliation of government funds, balance sheet. It's just, yeah, I had trouble keeping up with it.
That's terrible.
That's intentional.
Yeah, I mean, I would not disagree with that.
Yeah.
But that's terrible because most people don't even understand what, like you're saying, Miami, you're talking about the city of Miami. People don't get the difference in the county and the city and Miami and Coral Gables and Miami Beach
Yeah.
and Miami-Dade. And they don't understand what they pay taxes for.
Yeah, and that's one thing. It's about transparency, and yeah, each one of those municipalities that you mentioned, they have their own comprehensive
Right.
financial reports, or CAFRs, CAFRs. So I guess you might be wondering how Miami is able to function despite having a deficit in its financial reporting. Well, it's got its finance department. The finance department, they're the ones that find the money or get the money, and they have different tools at their disposal in order to do that. In addition to creating the comprehensive annual financial reports, they have a financial advisor like most of us do. It's a private company in the city. They also have a private firm that gives them security compliance support when they create bonds. So whenever the city of Miami needs to create a bond or a securities instrument in order to raise money, to borrow money, it gets that assistance from a private company. And now there's also a finance committee that is essentially supposed to be the oversight mechanism on behalf of the commission as to what the finance department does. And also there's a Department of Management and Budget, and they determine who actually allocates the money, and they figure out what the operating budget's going to be. That's the budget for things like operations, picking up solid waste, picking up recycling, and what have you. And they also have a capital budget, which determines all the capital assets, i.e. the buildings, the bridges, all of those types of things. They decide what gets spent in order to preserve those and make sure that they're well run and well maintained. And also, yes, and they also have an Office of Capital Improvement. And again, that is an entity that makes the determination. That's one of the entities that decide how to spend the money that they get allocated from the budget department that is found by the finance department. And like as mentioned, the Department of Real Estate and Asset Management, or DREAM, they're the ones that manage all the buildings, all the real estate that Miami owns. They rent those facilities out, whether it be the Tower Theater. They enter into the lease agreements with the Rickenbacker Marina for the Wharf Miami. They enter into the lease agreements with the vendors that actually manage those and make the money that sell the goods and services at those different locations. And finally, the City of Miami's bank is the City National Bank of Florida, which is a private bank that's a subsidiary of BCI, which is a Chilean bank owned by the billionaire Yarur family. So it's Chilean billionaires own the bank that owns Miami, the bank that Miami does, the City of Miami does business with.
Yeah.
Any questions?
How do I get a piece of the action?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I guess you could.
Those entities that you mentioned. Every one of those entities that you mentioned gets a piece of what's going on financially, all the transactions that occur in Miami.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And since Miami, despite being $2.3 billion in the hole, because Miami does do a lot of business, because it is in fact it's economically, it's very, very strong. The people are lining up to get a piece of that action.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you wonder. I mean, can't Miamians get a piece of that action?
Yeah, right. But I say that puts a lot of demands on people who want to live here, who have to live here.
Mm-hmm.
And they're two different groups of people, but there are some people for whom it's no burden at all, and other people who are just insurmountable burden.
Yeah, and I think that is
Need those populations to carry out the functions of the city.
right. And those individuals, they come here, and yeah, there's a lot of demand for like very little supply.
Yep.
And in order to meet that demand, what the city of Miami will do is, again, as I alluded to earlier, the finance department will like create bonds in order as securities, financial instruments for private investors to purchase, and then that's how they'll get a lot of their money. For example, I don't know if you are familiar with the Miami Forever bond. That was a $4 million sale of bonds. This designed to be able to like increase our resilience to sea level rise, to do roadway improvements, to improve the parks and the cultural facilities for public safety, as well as, and I give them credit for affordable housing. A significant chunk, about 1/4 of that 400 million, is slated to go towards affordable housing, to build affordable housing units in Miami. Now, how that pans out and how specifically that works, we'll just have to continue to pay attention. But it at least it's there. And yeah, there is Miami, despite what its financial reports say, there's money there to do the types of things, to get done the types of things that Miamians need. Because it's being done as we speak. Other bonds, they've also like created bonds for other infrastructure projects, other things like roads, bridges, buildings, and Miami can also get money they get it from federal sources like the Community Development Block Grant Program from the HUD, as well as the Home Investment Partnerships Program, which is also a HUD program, and they also are able to, from parking, the finance department, as I understand it, they're able to like charge parking surcharges. So any parking that's done within the city of Miami's limits, there's a surcharge on that, and that goes towards the revenue, towards the city's revenue numbers. And also the Miami Parking Authority, there's a partnership with the county and the other municipalities to share in the excesses. If there's excess money that comes in from that every year, then that finds its way back into Miami's coffers. So yeah, there are ways. The city of Miami has found ways to fund itself despite the fact of its financial difficulties as they would appear on their financial reports. Because again, Miami is an economically, some would argue it's an economically successful city with all the wealth that it has and with all the revenue that it is able to generate from its own devices, the level of investment that comes from private investors willing to buy bonds that are backed by the full faith and credit of the city. So that is something there.
Yeah.
But along those lines, Miami is working to fund all the things that the city needs. It's put together in 2022. Miami put together a strategic plan, and I would encourage anyone to just Google City of Miami strategic plan and take a look at it, because it's pretty comprehensive in giving everything that is needed, including, I have it printed out right here, but yeah, there's aspects of this that say increase and enhance housing options. So dealing with affordable housing, climate resilience. There's items in here to increase our climate resilience. There's items in here to strengthen public safety and law enforcement. There's items in here to increase responsiveness to the concerns of residents, including strengthen and trust through excellent customer service, modernize and streamline city processes. So there is a concerted effort on the part of Miami to make things better. The question is, how much, where will the money, which of these priorities will get funded and to what degree? Well, that remains to be seen. I know me as a commissioner, I will work very, 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 very hard, use the tools available to me to ensure that A, the money goes where it needs to go, and B, average Miami residents will know what exactly is going to where and how much. Any questions on that?
Good.
Okay, now this getting back down to the final piece in answering the question, is Miami broke? I would say arguably that it is not. It just needs to be better at utilizing its resources and better at allocating resources and more transparent about allocating its resources to where it needs to go to meet its strategic plan and meet the needs of all the residents. So the city of Miami can always solicit for more federal money, for more federal grants. It can further expand the city's tax base. It can also facilitate the creation of instruments that average Miamians, regular Miamians could use, as opposed to just private investors. There could be things that I would say that Miami shouldn't have to only borrow from private investors and banks. There are mechanisms that it can create, like publicly owned sources. I mean, why can't the city of Miami borrow from publicly owned sources, like a public bank that is owned, that would be set up by the government, by the politicians, but owns completely by the residents. And that bank would finance and borrow and loan money to the city to make those capital infrastructure investments, to facilitate the building of affordable housing, and possibly, no, definitely fill that $2.3 billion hole. Because right now, our money is in the hands of a private bank. But who's to say that it can't be in the hands of a public bank? There's only one public bank in the country, and that's the Bank of North Dakota. And all the other cities and states and municipalities, their funds are in the hands of private banks. But that isn't to say that it can't be different. I think it should be different, and I think it's well within a capability and well within the authority of a city like Miami to charter a public bank in order to make that change. I guess that being said, I would say that there are like many options for Miami to not just thrive the way it's doing as an economically strong base, but as a way to fill the gaps in its builds. Because I've heard a lot about city services being cut, and a lot of people, like right here in Shenandoah, complain about the fact that the recycling doesn't come as much as it used to. Sometimes the trash is not picked up as often as it needs to be. And yeah, I don't know specifically why that is, but I can only guess that it's because the services have been cut because the money's not there. But that's one thing I would like to push for, as if I were elected to the city commission, I would push to have the independent auditor general reinstated, so they could provide some degree of transparency to these comprehensive annual financial reports, as well as giving true independence and authority to the newly created inspector general. Because right now it's not filled, but they still need to hire somebody to do it. But it doesn't really have a great deal of independence and power that I feel that it needs in order to allow the transparency to come to be that needs to exist in Miami. And then finally, I'm thinking I would likely introduce a resolution or an ordinance that would start the chartering of a city public bank that's owned by residents. And so we could begin to at least allow money, instead of it going into the very wealthy, that would in fact allow it to come back to the city, come back to the taxpayers, and build the things that the city needs, where it could where interest rates on loans could be cheaper, and any surplus can come back to the city of Miami in the form of a refund check, kind of like what you got regarding your tax refund, Dave. Earlier, did it happen earlier this year or last year? When did that happen?
Like last week.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was. I opened it up. And it was a notice of a refund, so.
Great.
I haven't called the bank yet to find out, but they said it could be immediately deposited. So.
Fantastic. So and that's pretty much what I wanted to discuss, just as a means as what I would be looking to bring to the table in this regard, as a means to ensure that, regarding revenue, just to ensure that Miami's financial position is a little bit more stable, and that it's a little bit more equitable and a little bit more shared with other folks in Miami. What are y'all's thoughts?
Good idea.
I really don't know what to think, because I don't know what kind of deficit is healthy for a city to run. I mean, that doesn't, you said it's what, 2.3 billion in the hole?
Yes.
I mean, that's peanuts compared to what the United States are. But I mean, that's the way business is done. I mean, it's like, it's set
How
up.
do we compare?
Yeah, I mean, it's set up for entities to borrow and to pay back at some reasonable interest rate, and that's business. I mean, that's
right. I mean, yeah, it is. We're not as bad as New York. Again, New York City, I think if Truth in Accounting had their report, is having them as either like 100 billion or 200 billion in the hole.
Yeah.
But it's not like New York City is going under anytime soon. So to that point, there is debt. Having debt is not necessarily going to cause a city to go belly up. So there is, because especially a city that's as economically strong as Miami will be able to generate the revenue to make those interest payments.
Yeah.
I was just saying that, okay, do the interest payments have to go? Why do all the interest payments necessarily have to go to private investors? Can they come back to a public entity that is owned by the taxpayers? Because since a public bank doesn't have shareholders, doesn't have people that are demanding an increased dividend every 3 months or every quarter, then the public bank can actually do things that are not necessarily good for a shareholder, are good for like average folks like you and I. Like, I would encourage you, look up the Bank of North Dakota. The Bank of North Dakota is the only public bank in the United States, and what they've been able to give to the residents of North Dakota, I mean, it is one of the few banks that soon after the financial crash of 2007, 2008 actually had a surplus. In fact, the state of North Dakota actually had a surplus in cash. They weren't in the hole.
Huh.
Yeah, and because their overhead is lower because they don't have shareholders. They're able to give since the taxpayers of North Dakota own the actual public bank in North Dakota,
Yeah.
their dividends comes in the form of surplus checks. So they go to average people, average North Dakotans, as opposed to Wall Street bankers or Chilean bankers. Yeah, I would encourage you to check it out and look at their history. I mean, they started out They started out as an agricultural bank in 1919 because the farmers in North Dakota, they couldn't get banking services because back then most of the banks were like on Wall Street in New York City, so they had to like use their own devices. And here they are, like 100 years later, they were probably one of the more successful banks that got through the financial crash. They didn't get bought up by the private banks, and the best part is in North Dakota there are more private banks per capita in North Dakota than there are anywhere else in the country.
That's right. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's about doing what's best for the public as opposed to what's best for the shareholders.
But you know, the public in North Dakota has probably got the same population as Shenandoah.
Yeah, I think they got about 700,000. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if a state of 700,000 can do it, I would say that a city of close to 500,000 can do it as well.
All right, we'll see. I
Absolutely.
hope you're right.
All right. Are there any other questions before?
Once again, you've done your homework. That's really good.
Well, I still got a lot to learn. So, but I appreciate y'all taking the time and coming out. And I'm definitely going to have more of these because I think that I want to hear from voters, and I want to ensure that voters are as informed as they can be about their government, because I think that it's the responsibility of the city government to make this information more available. I think the city should be bringing it to the voters. So I hope to facilitate that as much as I can if I'm elected.
Okay. Keep us informed.
All right, thank you guys, and you have a fantastic night.
Good seeing you.
Have a good weekend.
You too.